Pumped the brakes when I did my first podcast. I'm like, I could do this full time.
Happy Tuesday, my friends. That is Shaun Newman of the Shaun Newman Podcast, and I am so excited to have him as a guest here on Ramble with Intent. I'm your host, Lisa Szabon-Smith, and without further ado, I'm going to bring that podcast, but you've got to listen to the whole thing. Hit pause, whatever. Watch it listen to it, watch it when you can. Share it with your friends. We touch on so many tidbits. He interviews me in the beginning, standard host habit, and then we just dive in. We talk politics, sports, the power of belief in us from someone else, and so much more. Most importantly, guys, you gotta get your shit together. So without further ado, Shaun Newman, let's ramble. Hello.
How's Lisa?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Thank you very much. This is super cool. I have you on my wall actually as like someone I'd love to interview. So you tick that off. Thank you.
How did I end up there?
To be honest, I think you introduced me to podcast as more than just like useless dribble, to be honest.
Oh, gee, that's an awfully kind compliment.
Well, I hope it came across as one. Yeah, it was. Yes. I can't remember the time. It was somewhere between like, I don't know, late 2021 into 2022, I came across one of your interviews and I can't remember the gentleman. I tried finding it too. Didn't work. But it was around, what was it? It was during COVID. And I think the topic was on how they kind of like COVID bubbled their town to help the businesses continue to operate and thrive and function. And they just went into like a creative, this is what we do during blizzards. So this is what we're going to do during COVID. And they thrived. And I can't remember it, but it was effective. And then it just, from there I'm like, okay, I can get information from these things. So thank you.
Crap. I wish I could give you the exact, it's funny. I recall that thought, but I can't recall who said it. That's,
I know.
But in fairness, I guess that's like, I don't know, 400 episodes ago. So I guess I shouldn't hold myself too hard. But
well, you just released today was 639. So.
639, and with the archives and the mashups, we're over 800 now. So there's quite a few.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, some of it can be pointless dribble. I'm sure. I'm not going to stand behind. Well, I am going to stand behind the entire product, but there is a method to the madness, I guess.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're doing is working, right? So kudos and keep going, because I know.
Well, thank you.
I know that this is a world that a lot of people have started to just dive into more and more, and I think it's a really good form of creative expression, without anyone realizing that they're being creative in this process.
Well, it's about as some people write.
Yep.
And I don't know. This is my form, I guess, of writing. Unbeknownst to me, until you get as many episodes in as you do. Because if I go back and listen to myself at the beginning of COVID, I want to punch myself in the face. So
I'm sure when I get to even hit number 50 and I go back to my first one, I'll be like, oh wow.
It won't be hard, because there's such a you just get better at so many things, right? It's just like anything, You strap on the skates for the first time you go skating is not the same as the 100th, as the 10,000th, on and on and on it goes. So
exactly. It's a craft in the end, right?
Yes, it is. Yep. It very much is. Yep.
Yeah. Fabulous. So Shaun Newman, you have your Shaun Newman podcast. You started as a sports guy. So
I still am a sports guy.
Well, you started only talking about sports. That was the premise, correct?
Well, no. The original premise was so there's this is not a plug for them. It's just a part of my journey. Podcast Summit, I think, is coming back to Calgary this year, and when I went there the first time, this is probably 2019. Well, COVID wasn't going, I don't think, so I would assume it was 2019. And I just started the podcast, and I was talking to a lady, and she said, "Well, what's your podcast about?" And I'm like, it's kind of hard to explain, but the way I try is I'm like 70%. I had this like breakdown, and it was actually I bumped it to 80. It was 80% sports, 10% history, 10% adventure. The thought process hadn't been to stick with sports. The thought process had been to stick to interesting people. And my life, I broke into like 3 different things I was really interested in. One being sports, one being history. I graduated with a degree in history, although just a BA, nothing fancy. I don't got a PhD or anything like that. And then the third was I biked across Canada when I was 20. And I really liked people who did things outside the box. They just, to me, had so much life experience. So I approached it that way, but I very quickly found out, as hard as I tried not to, that I was very connected to the hockey world. I played hockey all my life, still do play hockey, just not, competitively anymore. And it was funny. You had ins to that world. And as you made more ins to it, more people wanted to come on and talk about their experiences. And they were interesting stories. You just kind of, am I gonna say no to Kelly Rudy? No, I'm gonna do Kelly Rudy. And then Kelly Rudy, you get him, and then it leads to the next guy and the next guy. And pretty soon you got Ron MacLean, Don Cherry, and all these guys that, like Don Cherry was every Christmas morning in our household. It was that was one of the first things we did after we opened presents, was watch Rock'em Sock'em. And so I was like, I don't know how I got here, other than I didn't realize how powerful my connection to the hockey world was. So everybody looked at me and said, "You're a sports guy and you're trying to be spitting chicklets." And I was like, no, I'm actually not trying to be that. Yeah. And every time I interviewed somebody else, I think one of the early ones was Brandy Hofer. She's an artist from town, paints. It just fascinated me to hear how different people looked at the world. Yeah. And so I was trying really hard, but at that time I was only doing maybe a podcast a week. And I found that really difficult, because I would get like 4 people that wanted to come on. So then, all right, well, I'll book it out for the month. And those 4 people would turn out to have sports leanings. And then the more sports I did, the more, and I wasn't doing enough. Now I do 5 a week, and I can literally interview anyone under the planet, and I can't seem to get back to a sports person, which is kind of funny.
Well, on the flip side, my whole upbringing and my whole life and childhood identity was sports. So you're kind of there. So it's interesting though, because as athletes, a lot of us, we go through identifying and viewing the world very differently from like your, average Joe, I guess, non-athlete type too. We have different insights, different perspectives that allow us to have these really unique conversations as well, and fuel your natural curiosity.
Forgive me, Lisa. I don't know. What did you play growing up?
So growing up in small town Nanton, I played every sport that was available except for hockey. And then I went on to college and swam and played volleyball for my college. And then from there, competed internationally in bobsleigh.
In bobsledding?
Yeah.
Come on. Who should be interviewing here, folks? Now we got a story, right? Like bobsledding. I mean, everybody watched Cool Runnings when I was growing up. But I mean, like, how many people actually get into bobsledding? Yeah. Not very many. I assume that's a pretty small little group of people.
Yeah. I have only met one person in Canada where they actually grew up saying they wanted to become a bobsledder. And the rest of us were like, well, I was done being an athlete in all the traditional realms. And they said, come try it. So I figured, why not?
Well, you got one over me, because nobody shoulder tapped me and said, hey, why don't you try bobsledding?
That's because hockey players can't run.
Oh, is that so? Oh, fair enough. Okay. Shots fired. All right, folks. Yeah, well, that's cool. So you competed internationally in bobsledding. How did you do?
I did okay. I struggled with the politics up in the higher levels and a few other maintenance sled malfunctions that set me backwards a few times. But internationally, I hit the podium twice in World Junior Championships, and then was competing and pushing to try and qualify for the 2010 Olympics. And that didn't fall through as hoped, and there's a whole backstory to it, but we don't have time. And so
did you when you say bobsledding, were you on a team, or was it
so it was 2-person at that time?
2-person.
Yeah, so I was the pilot, and then my brakeman would change typically every race or every season.
And did you enjoy it?
I loved it. I loved it.
I assume from your story, it wasn't like something you grew up wanting to do. You literally did not bobsled in your off days, so you just hopped in and went, oh, this will be interesting, and then just like, holy crap, I actually enjoy this.
Yes. Yeah. So I tobogganed as a kid, if you count that, but
I don't count that because
No,
I tobogganed. All of us kids tobogganed. Nobody went, I can't wait to beat a bobsled.
Yeah.
Just hammering down one of those tracks. Because how fast do you get going while you're in there?
It depends on the track. In Whistler, I think my top speed in one spot was like 145 kilometers an hour. But then you go to like Calgary and you hit 120 if you're lucky. So it totally varies from track to track. But
you're not going 20 miles an hour down the thing. Like this is, you're going fast. I got to interview a girl. She's actually married to one of the guys I played college hockey with. And she got to do Red Bull Crashed Ice. And I remember watching her just being like, this is so cool. Yeah. Right? Like, how do you transition from being an athlete into these obscure sports? And that's not to not bobsledding. It's just not like every kid, it's not like every town has a bobsled track. Like to me, it's a pretty unique little sport, as is Red Bull Crashed Ice. And now I've interviewed one of them, and now I'm meeting a bobsledder. I mean, geez, squeeze. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We'll have to book another interview at some point.
Well, I guess so. Well, to me, getting into like what I do, that's what I was fascinated. I was fascinated by people's stories. Everybody has one, and if you look at the world through the eyes of like like right now, I'm doing blue collar roundtables, which is taking the most mundane jobs and putting them on a roundtable. Why? Because their voices are needed. Immensely these days. So that's putting plumbers and electricians and people can use their imaginations and go wherever you want. And as we've discussed it, we've realized a lot of jobs in today's society are actually blue collar. They're pretty much, they're much needed. You need the grocery stocker just as much as you need the truck driver, just as much, because if you don't have them all, then our society doesn't flow. So the bobsledding angle would be really interesting to hear the stories and I'm sure it taught you different lessons than swimming.
Various lessons. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It taught me so many lessons and taught me how to be, how to start advocating for myself in various situations, how to identify, plots as they're showing up within the team dynamic, that while you're a team, you're not always acting as a team. And
what do you mean by that?
Oh, goodness. So politics, right?
But politics in a team of two on bobsledding?
Yeah, because there's a pecking order. So while there's two, there was also two other Canadian sleds on that national team for the women's team. And so in there, you have 3 pilots, you have 3 guaranteed brakemen, plus usually 2 extra brakemen as well. So you're traveling with, 8 girls. Plus then you have the whole men's program along with you as well. And in the name of, you get ranked in terms of who gets the best equipment, who gets top pick in your starts races, who gets the top amount of government funding as athlete funding. And so you want to be Canada 1, or as a brakeman, you want to be in that Canada 1 sled.
And what were you?
I hung out at Canada 3, unfortunately.
So when you do races, having the 3rd spot, the ice isn't as good? Is that or am I just misinterpreting that?
It's more so in the training positioning, because when it comes to races, it's by race draw. So your sled number gets drawn. Top 10 get drawn first to fill out the top 10 for a TV, and then the remaining top 10 get drawn secondary. And so they finish, 11 through to 20 in that listing. And correct, as for every track except for St. Moritz, the later off you are in the start line, on the start list, the slower the ice becomes, because it just starts to get that wear and tear, or it actually will warm up. So your runners need to respond to the temperatures of the ice, how much moisture is on it. There's a lot of like physics and environmental sciences involved in that as well. Yes. And then so inside of that, there's pecking orders, and there's like how to get the coach's attention all the time, how to make sure they're watching you and focusing on you as you go through the track. Little did my coaches know that I could see them so clearly. I knew what they were doing as I was going past them, because your eyes start getting trained to, process things at those top speeds. And there were many times where I'm like, you weren't watching me. You're writing in your notebook, not even watching what I'm doing as I'm going through the corner. So why aren't you coaching me? And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so needs more help, or whatever the line might be. So there's a bunch of things and nuances within there. And then just in who gets travel.
It'd be different than the swimming world, I would assume, because everybody gets in the same pool. You can convince me otherwise, but I don't think the water changes from lane to lane.
No.
I'm assuming the choice of gear isn't like, oh, you get the old hand-me-down swim cap or what. So like that would be a real culture change.
And choice of gear is a huge thing. So I had 2 sleds that were Federation supplied, and they both broke at one point. I had one sled during a pivotal race-off that broke in half. And that impacted how my Olympic career was turning out at that point. So,
well, you wonder why more people don't get into bobsledding, and you hear that story, and you're like, well, I mean, you can be exceptional, but if your bobsled breaks in half,
I got lucky.
Go into the Olympics, my guess.
A lot of fun. So yeah, there's lots of stories there, but it definitely, you open your eyes and you start identifying like, so-and-so's changed their demeanor around me. What's going on? Or there's this chatter over on this side with the men's program about what's happening between these women here. Why are they trying to build it up and now bringing me into it? So what's happening? What kind of like underlying tones are starting to happen? And I mean, granted, when you live with people and travel with them and you're in confined spaces for a length of time, stuff's going to happen and people are going to become human at their most unpleasant. However, you become aware of those things as well. So I learned a lot. And then, I mean, just being able to watch and experience the world and how it plays out in that realm, and really identifying that the moment I stepped away from that bobsleigh track, I was nobody. So to carry that chip on my shoulder outside of that world did not help me. So I needed to establish myself in other realms and other ways of living my life as well outside of that world. So thankfully I had enough insight and forethought for that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a stage of life. It taught you a lot of things, I bet, right?
Yeah,
like, I mean, as to all stages of life, if you just keep your eyes open and pay attention, right? Like if you carry it on and on and on, that's a tough way to go about every day.
It can be, absolutely. Yeah. And I learned how powerful mindset can be. So I didn't qualify for the Olympic team. I traveled with the development level team, and I had to make a choice, either be bitter and jaded the entire time or become a leader and help all of those development athletes move up and know how to use their sleds to their advantage and how to drive the certain tracks and such. So it put me into such a wonderful position, realizing that my strongest skill set is actually elevating the other people around me. And that's probably why I didn't thrive in that other high level environment, is because I was never able to help elevate those around me and thereby elevating myself too.
It's just I don't know, I come from a team sport background where, like it isn't individual. Like at times you can be awarded for individual achievements, but you look at the Stanley Cup playoffs going on right now, and if you're an individual, your team's going to go down the toilet real fast. You got to play as a group. And so once you get into the politics of sport, that can undermine a lot of good team culture. And I can imagine competing for the Olympics and, only having so many sleds that get to go and so much fun, because this isn't $1 billion sport in bobsledding, right? Like I can see how the human nature part of it would be very evident.
Yeah, it was, but it set me up for so many other things moving forward. So I'm thankful for the time. It was a great experience and I learned lots, right? And so hockey for you, how high of a level did you get up for in your hockey?
I played junior A growing up, and then Division III, and then a little bit of pro. I signed a deal over in Finland for cup of coffee, as I call it. I was So I played junior A for 3 years, and in my final year, I was the captain of the team, and like we had a lot of fun in Ontario, and met one of the most instrumental coaches of my life, in Larry Wintoniak, and he was a coach that just demanded a lot out of young men, and I thrived under it. I needed a little bit of a stern voice in my life at that time, just saying like, listen, you're not drinking every weekend, you're not doing this, you're not staying out till 2 a.m, on and on and on. And on the ice, he was the same way. And if you played hard and played his simple strategies, right, all of a sudden you earned a spot in the team, and you became very welcomed in. And I thrived under that. And it really changed the direction of where I was going in life. And I was fortunate enough to land and play some Division III college in the United States, Wisconsin. And during the 4 years there, we were not a great team. There is no way to get around it. It was a long 4 years, a lot of losses. And coming from a Larry Wintoniak world, it was really tough to handle because it was a lot relaxed.
Yeah.
And almost the mentality of, if we won a game, we were happy. And I was never there. But the best thing that happened to me there is I met a girl. And I'm sure lots of people have college stories like that. But, the first person I met walking onto campus, and I blew her off, turned out to be my later on wife. And that's why I left Finland. I went to Finland. She was getting her master's in upstate New York. She was a volleyball player. Mm-hmm. And so she went on to get her master's in teaching. Mm-hmm. And while we were living apart, I just, you just kind of had this moment. It's like, well, if I don't go back, it's over. And are you okay with that? And the answer was no. And, now we're a couple months away from 10 years of marriage, and we've been together 17 years. We got 3 beautiful kids, and she helped give me the, I don't know, urge is probably the wrong word, but, pump the brakes when I did my first podcast. I'm like, I could do this full time. It took 3 years to get it to the point where I'm like, I can do this full time. And she was the lady standing beside me, like making sure that, by the time I made the case for it, I'm like, no, I can go. Look at all that. And, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then she carried the water for our family for a full on, well, it had to have been a year and a half while I, muddled through, starting out a podcast, even though it had been started in 2019. For 3 years, I literally worked every morning, every evening, 4 hours on Sundays, interviewing people so I could get it to the point where you could go full time. And so, as much as my hockey career was a ton of fun and I have lots of memories of it, the best thing to come out of it was a woman that, has done an awful lot in my life, and more than any coach, to be honest. And I have no qualm in saying that, and I don't mean it as some love song. I've been very fortunate. I'm sure, I used to tease her that she was very fortunate, but I think the roles are reversing here as time goes on.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I mean, thankfully you have gained more from the woman or the person you married versus a person who coached you. Really and truly, if you're going to make that commitment.
Yeah. You're not wrong on that. I just, once again, I look at it, you talked about, bobsledding and swimming in these different areas and how you take different, we can call it seasons of life.
Yeah.
And it was just very pivotal moments. When I was 18, I was just looking for a party, and, I didn't want to play hockey. I've been told no all my life because I'm a short guy. I'm kind of Tom Cruise. I'm about 5'7". I'm a stocky little defenseman, and every coach up until that point had said basically, you're really good, just too short. Yep. And you hear that enough times, and you just don't care anymore. Yeah. And so a coach came along, and it was just pivotal. It was just this moment, a little bit of belief. I watch it in athletes all the time. And it doesn't even have to be athletes. I guess it just sticks out to me more. When a coach believes in a player, the things they will run through for that coach because of just having the belief that they're good enough. Yeah. And you think it's only in the NHL, or you think it can't be in the NHL because all these guys are professionals, but it goes all the way through sports. Yeah. A little bit of belief goes a long way. And my early interviews with athletes really taught me this, because I was interviewing people who played in the NHL, but I also interviewed people that had never played, beyond, at that point, probably Division I. And the story was eerie how, you know, they got one team reached out, said, we believe in you. And they went immediately and went and gave their heart and soul to that team. It's really interesting to watch. Well, I guess it's probably just how powerful those words are. I believe in you.
100%.
Right? Like most people don't understand that. And if you've experienced it as an athlete, you know exactly what it means.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had, like, we'll go back to bobsleigh. When I first started, I had this coach, Siggy Fuser, and she was amazing. Like, she was your hard German-raised Canadian bobsleigh coach, lived, eat, slept, breathed bobsleigh, loved it. And she was one of the pivotal women that started women's bobsleigh within Canada. And they would travel over to Europe and trade peanut butter for hotel rooms. And they'd sleep in the vans with their sleds. And that was back, like, even up until early 2000s. If you won in a women's bobsleigh race, you were getting knitting kits or cleaning supplies as your awards, because it wasn't, women don't do bobsleigh. That was the whole frame of mind. But then she started coaching, and I was so blessed to have her as a coach because I had this natural ability, and she just, instead of telling me what to do, she was like, "Okay, teach me how to drive this corner." So she basically taught me how to coach myself and then would correct where I needed to. But the amount of belief and faith that she had, and just like the excitement and exuberance that she would share when you got something right or just had a successful day, was enough for you to be like, I can do this. Like this, I can actually fight for trying to go to the Olympics.
And I bet it made you want to show up to the track the next day.
Absolutely. Absolutely did. To the point where I was like volunteering my sled and my team to be forerunning for the men's races. And if they needed forerunners for skeleton, we would do that because it just meant more time on the track to learn more and to get better. And so it also probably is what allowed me to be so comfortable with settling with being a forerunner at the 2010 Olympics, because I had found the love of the sport first. And it wasn't what defined me. It was just that passion and that satisfaction of being able to do something that when you get it right, it is beautiful. And why not be part of something beautiful?
Yes, but you also had a coach who instilled it. Because what you talked about at the start was the politics and all the stuff around it that take away from the sport.
Yeah.
And lots of athletes burn out of their collective sports because of politics. Because of, you know, whether it's, you know, whatever high level you want to go up to the lowest level, it's because of coaches. It becomes politics. Can, you know, in minor hockey, it can just be that, you know, certain families or what have you. It's the politics. It isn't about the game anymore. It's taken away. And when you talk about the German lady, I believe you said,
Siggy.
And when you talk about Siggy, when you talk about her, you light up. It's like, it's very easy to see. And those are few and far between. You don't get those every day of the week, because if you did, everybody be in bobsled, or everybody be here, there, everywhere. Those coaches are so few and far between, which is really sad to say, because but in saying that, they're special. And it doesn't work for every player.
No.
It doesn't mean every person's going to love how they do things. Some people aren't wired the same way you are or I am. Yeah. And I go back to Larry. Lots of people hate him. I've probably met, you know, I don't know, 50 guys over the course of my life who played for him.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a 50-50 coin toss, maybe even 60-40 on the side they hated him.
Yeah.
And I got nothing bad. I literally went and played AAA, well, I guess it'd be A in Saskatchewan, A provincial senior when I came home. And I was going to do it for free. It was actually going to cost me money, because it was like driving 2 hours one way just to go play for him one more time. I just wanted to go play for him. And none of the other guys could understand that. Why are you driving so far? I just want to play, you know. Yeah. And it was just that's it's exactly what you're saying. That is the power of what a coach can instill in any kid at any point in time. And it also means that don't get heartbroken if every kid doesn't respond to you the way a certain one does. It's just, you know, a kid could be getting led right to that point. For Larry, at that point, he had a kid who'd been told no all of his life. Mm-hmm. I've been making the top teams, but when I tried to make the next level, everybody just said no.
Yeah.
No. And they said similar things. And here comes a coach. And now he's got a kid that is a decent hockey player, maybe better than some, but I'm not NHL worthy, folks. I'm not going to stretch your imagination. But I was a decent hockey player.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I've been told no everywhere. And yet you put me on the ice. My parents talked about it. I've had lots of conversations about this because I got 3 young kids now. And I remember not wanting to go play in certain hockey tournaments or certain things. And my mom would say, we'd have to drag you out of the house. You didn't want to go. But as soon as you got in the rink, you lit up. You loved being on the ice. You loved being around hockey. And so we just knew we had to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, you can, if you're in tune with your players and see what they're doing, you can see when that happens.
Yeah.
It's like, I just got to figure out a way to, tweak it a little bit. And all of a sudden they're off and running.
Mm-hmm.
And they're teaching themselves because they're out on the course. They're out on the ice. They're doing things. They're trying to learn. They're trying to get better because they want to be better instead of being just yelled and screamed at and told this is how it's going to be.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Bang on. I think for parents, it's key finding the thing or helping encourage the kid to just try everything before they go and say, oh, I'm going to be a hockey player, whatever it may be, because normal paths are not always the one that takes you to the places that you never imagined. Bobsleigh being a prime example.
Yeah, the only thing with bobsledding is I don't know how you get a kid into it at a young age. You probably have a way. Yeah,
you'd have to throw them in luge first.
I'm a firm believer in like a kid should try everything. But I mean, within reason, but pretty much everything, because you just never know what is gonna captivate them or what they're gonna naturally be good at. Listen, the reason I am probably love playing hockey is at age 2, I was skating. By age 3, I was skating around everyone. By age 4, I was playing up with the older kids, and on it went. Connor McDavid loves playing hockey because he's really good at it. Yeah. But there was also some natural ability there, and there was some things that were put into it, right? Because you can work really hard and become really, really good at something. But it's unusual. Like, it's unusual in the sense that, like, if you really hate something, chances are you don't want to go and do it, That's a unique trait to have, to push through. Yeah. So with kids, you also got to wrestle them too, because sometimes they're just kids, and they just I don't want to go. Well, you're going. Yeah. So I don't know. Do you have kids, Lisa?
I have a 10-year-old daughter who has fallen in love with ringette and swimming. So ringette in the winter and swim club in the summer. Yeah. And it's great.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, if I may say so, you don't look like you'd have a 10-year-old. So
thank you.
I got 3. I got an 8, soon to be 7 in July, I guess, and then soon to be, well, not really that soon, but soon to be 5 at the end of September. So we got a busy side on our end. We're into baseball right now and soccer, which is, anytime they get outside and are playing with other kids and having some fun and learning some skills as well. I'm all for it.
Well, and sport is such a good foundation for life skill as well, because you learn how to work with other people. You learn how to understand other people's emotions. You learn how to understand your own emotions and take instruction and many other things. And for my daughter, we actually, like last year, forced her into swim club because we had a near drowning incident the previous summer on our river. And at that point, I was like, clearly swim lessons are not doing enough for you. You need to get into swim club because you can at least then know that you can swim for a length of time and survive. And so that's what happened. And the agreement was, I'll do swim club too, to get her to be okay with it. And then she did the trial week, loved it. I was like, okay, I don't have to do swim club. And she held me to account. So I've returned to swim club now as a master swimmer, but it's like, you have those skills, and then now I'm
like riding a bike for you,
Totally,
She's like, I had to go back to swim club, folks. Meanwhile, she's a dolphin out there just skipping along the top. My brothers we did a triathlon when I was a younger man, and they called me the tugboat because I created such a wake, and I'm not a terrible swimmer. I'm not designed for the water. Maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe dense bones, who knows.
It's all good. It's all good. So outside of sports and your podcast, what do you do? What do you take in life? How do you find all your guests is probably a really good question.
Um, well, that has really evolved over time. I got a list of like, this is my dream list, my bucket list, and every once in a while I get to check one off.
Nice.
And that's like, I don't know. Surreal is probably the best word. Although I've come to really realize all these people are just like me and you. I mean, honestly, they have a different pedigree in life, if you would.
Yeah.
But like they wake up every morning and they got bills to pay and they got to worry about this and nobody's immune to getting yelled at that their ideas are stupid or anything. Like they're all human beings.
Yeah.
Some are on the top of the wave, some are under the wave, some have been dragged out to sea by the wave, but they're all, human beings.
Mm-hmm.
I made a choice in the middle of COVID. Can't remember. Probably about 2021, roughly. I bought a second phone, and I just wanted a way to interact with my audience. I knew there was, at that time, hundreds of people listening. Now thousands. I don't know what to put it as, but regardless, I knew there was people listening. I wanted a way to interact with them, and everybody said, social media. So you go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go on Facebook. And I started that. I just didn't enjoy it. Like if there's a sport I don't enjoy, it's the sport of being on social media. I hate it. I just I understand its importance, but I just don't enjoy it. It takes.
At that time too, though, it was very like acidic, and
I think it still is.
You're right. It can be. I purposefully curate my social media so I don't see any of that.
Well, I want to interact with human beings.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is to have you in studio and sit across, or to be where you are and sit across and do these interviews. Mm-hmm. So like, I can't be a hypocrite. Like it has served me. But I had a choice of, am I going to spend 6 or 7 hours a day on social media and, answer every message? Cause I'm told all the time, like, you're not answering every message. Like, what are you doing? You're ruining what you're doing. And I'm like, I don't know. Every podcast I've done since the middle of 2021, it's almost 3 years now. There's been a phone number attached on every single podcast. Yeah. I will talk to anyone, and I've been yelled at. I've been screamed at. I've had bad texts. Some days I have rough days and I just don't look at it. Mm-hmm. But my phone is hooked up to everything. And so I applaud the audience that listens to me, because I'm not a huge fan of this word, but I'm going to say it anyways. I've empowered them with like, listen, you listen to somebody you think I should talk to, I'll trust you. I'll trust you once. If it sucks, then chances are the next time you bring in a guest, I'm going to be a little hesitant. Yeah. And some of the best guests I've got have not come from me searching them out. It's come from my audience, because they have more time than me. They listen to a lot more. And so they listen to all these people and they go, this would be somebody. You need to have this person. And usually my follow-up question is, any chance you know how to get a hold of them? And it's funny, when you ask people, they're like, no, that's like, no. But I looked into this. Here's an email address. And it just cuts down my time. So I have an army, for lack of a better term, of thousands of people that I tell all the time, listen, text me whenever. My phone goes on silent, do not disturb from 5 p.m. till 8 a.m. Yeah. They can text me whenever they want. If I don't answer, it's not because I'm mad at anyone. If I don't answer, it's not because, it's just chances are I'm just busy. Or I'm stressed, or I'm tired, or all these different things. But I want the line, because that's the thing I check. I go in, I check it, I connect with people there, and that's where I connect. And that's allowed me to get all these different guests, Lisa. Honestly, that's how I find 85% of my people, is now through that. It didn't used to be that. It used to be, I had a list, I built the list, and it filtered down, and I slowly sent, and I've learned along the way, like, as much fun as it would be to interview Donald Trump or Tucker Carlson or Jordan Peterson or, I don't know, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I don't know how much fun that'd be, and he's still not alive. But regardless, I don't know why that name came to mind. I was thinking Pierre. Top of mind in Canada. How much anger I have for the Trudeau family right now. But yes, would I love to interview them? my unequivocal answer is yes. I would love to interview people with experiences and stature that maybe only Joe Rogan gets, or a few others.
Mm-hmm.
But I have really found in Canada right now, with everything going on, some of the best conversations I've had that, in my opinion, have moved the needle come from people that are successful, that nobody knows about, that have a story to tell, but they live in Canada and we have nobody telling it. And so I don't shy away from, like this week on the podcast, I challenge your guests, your listenership, to know any of these names. And yet I think it has been a banger of a week. So on Monday, it was a military roundtable. Willie McDonald, John Hamilton, and Ian Green. Between the three of them, like, there's some, one of them is a 25-year air pilot commercially. One of them served for 25 years in the Canadian military. He's one of the most decorated alive people in the military. Mm-hmm. And then the next day was the Brothers Roundtable. It was my three brothers. We argue Edmonton Oilers being in the playoffs, essentially. And then we had Natasha Gonick. She's a lady who's investigating, like a death investigator. Yeah. And then today's Dave Petru. He's a teacher out of small town Saskatchewan that got removed from his job for writing a letter saying, I don't think we should be encouraging lies in school. And he's talking about pronouns and boys being girls when they can't be. Yeah. And to me, the week was regular human beings with exceptional stories. Mm-hmm. And those usually are the best. It doesn't mean that listening to Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson talk, which they just did, wasn't phenomenal. It was. Yeah. And would I take an opportunity to have either one of those on? I certainly would. Yeah. But I find the conversations that are moving the needle the most for my audience and myself has been people that they find and share with me. I bring them on, we talk, and out of that has come reoccurring guests, and it's just grown and shifted and moved. And, someday I hope it's Wayne Gretzky again, or, like Connor McDavid. I would love to have sports back. I love sports. Mm-hmm. It's just in Canada right now, it feels like we're going off a cliff or we're in the ditch, and, we just got to talk about some things. And right now, as much as I want to talk about the Edmonton Oilers 5 days a week, it's like, well, there's actually bigger things at play that need to be talked about, and people can get as mad as they want at me for doing that, because they do, and they go on their lives, but it isn't like, I'm not your messiah. No. I'm just staring at the problems I see, and I'm trying to talk about them, bring people on who can intelligently talk to me about it, and try and get my brain where I'm like, okay, I understand what's going on, and maybe we have some ideas of like what to do, because mainstream media ain't doing it. Like they're doing a very poor job. And the government's funding them, which at one point I would have said wasn't okay, whatever, but now it's like, well, now they don't criticize anything our government does, and we got a lot of crap going on in Canada. Mm-hmm. that's brutal, and it actually bleeds into sports. Is a sad thing.
Big time. Oh, big time. Absolutely does. And it's funny though, because like bread and circuses, right? We distract the masses with bread and circuses while we're doing all these other things.
I like bread and circuses. I like watching the Oilers win last night.
Can we go back to that? Where it was just rose-colored glasses and bread and circuses?
I actually don't think, like, I don't think you can go back. No. I just don't. That's probably my problem. It's like, I can't go back.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think we should. I think that's what's gotten us here. And we have been spending so much time in the last 20 years of like, just, don't ruffle feathers. Don't bring it up. It's a topic that we don't need to talk about, or don't push the subject. Don't ask more questions. Asking questions is bad, right? And now we're at a point where, like you said, our media isn't even asking questions. They aren't ruffling feathers. And we are now watching a very apathetic society either choose to continue to be apathetic, or all of a sudden listening to interviews like yours that you listed this past week, and so many others, trying to grasp onto information to have a better understanding of how did we get here? Why are we here? What can we do?
Well, the thing is we didn't get here overnight, and people really need to understand that, right? Mm-hmm. That was a hard thing for me to understand. I interviewed Julie Panesi, and that name keeps coming up, which probably means I should invite her back on. She was on like 199, and then I think like 202 or roughly that. And for the listener, I'm at 639, right? So she hasn't been on in a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And when I was interviewing her the first time, I remember she just lost her job at Northwestern College.
Yep.
Northwestern. And I remember thinking, like, just a harmless thought of like, Julie, like, how long are we going to be in this? 3 months? 6 months? And the look on her face was like, no, like a decade, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. All right. I was like, I had a hard time wrestling with that. And, over the course of, I'm glad she said it. I'm glad I had the reaction I had, because what I've been wrestling with now for 400 and some episodes is like, how did we actually get here? Was it the last 5 years?
No.
Was it the last 20? Was it the last 100? And you realize no matter what date you set on it, just understand it wasn't a day. It wasn't a year. It's been a long time coming. Okay, so how do we get out of it? Well, it ain't going to be a day. It ain't going to be a year. It's going to be a long time pushing the other way. And if you're apathetic and you just sit on the sidelines and expect it to get better, it won't. And so, that can also paralyze people. Yep. But here's the good thing. Like, I'll speak from being a man, and to all the married men out there, or even if they're not, is like, well, you get married, take care of your shit.
Yep.
And then as you're taking care of your shit, take care of your stuff inside your household. I don't know if I can swear on here, but normally I
swear away.
And I don't swear that much anymore. But to me, you got to take care of your shit. Yeah. And by doing that, you become a better husband. And by being a better husband means you will benefit your family. Yeah. And if you can take care of your family and do the things right there, then maybe you have something to offer the community at large.
Yeah.
And as you grow, you learn, like, it isn't these, everybody thinks like, out here in Alberta, Danielle Smith coming in was a big victory.
Yeah.
But if she doesn't have a bunch of communities that support her and people standing up, she is useless, because society is going to dictate where a politician goes. It's sad to say. If you want a different world, then bring in tyranny and get the right person on top of that. Yeah. Because tyranny, they can do whatever the hell they want. But as soon as it doesn't agree with you, they don't care. Yeah. And we live in a different world than that. And it's messy. And so, speaking to the men in the audience, like, listen, take care of your shit and go inside and figure that out. And, like, for me, Jordan Peterson's big. Now it's the Bible's big. There's a lot of big things in my world. Yeah. And once you figure that out, then you can start doing things for your family, your kids, and you're going to realize, the reason why it isn't a day change is because it's actually like we got to raise up our kids in the way. Yeah. And then you got to get involved in different things, everybody talks about school boards, important. I mean, obviously they're around kids, local, like politics. Okay. Sure. I came from a small town. I think the hockey rink politics are just as big as the RM politics, I think, but they're equally important. Now I've had, a weird epiphany in the last month where it's like, why did the churches fail? Honestly. And it's like, well, where were all the men supporting the pastors? Like, in all of Alberta, there was, and forgive me if people know the correct answer, was there 3 churches that stood up? I know of 2 for sure because I've interviewed them. There was Artur Pawlowski would have been the 3rd. I think he's a street preacher. Correct me if I'm wrong. Apologies on that one. And I'm sure there's a few others. Yeah. Maybe did a little quiet. But in our
Calgary for sure.
But in our community, my community, there's probably 30 churches. I don't know of a single one that just bucked it. Yeah. And when you go, well, why is that? And I got talked to a few different pastors, and I said, if you had a group of strong men surrounding it, and this is nothing against the mama bears, because the mama bears have been shouldering the load for a long time. If you had, a group of 20 men around you that said, no, we're not closing, would that have helped? And the equivocal answer is yes. Yeah. But we didn't do that. And so, as much as you need to get involved in the school board, the church is another one. You're not religious? Okay. The hockey rink, there's a bunch of different ways to help steer society back on course. It just doesn't happen overnight. And it certainly is going to take some time. And you got to, and you got to think our kids are watching, and they're watching what we're doing and how we're going to change this, what's going on. Because right now it is completely and utterly bizarre.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, and like you talk about the kids. And so I just interviewed Ava Chipiuk, and we were planning a youth debate here in the spring, had to push it into the fall. And then it prompted me to ask my nephews, who are 21 down to 16. And it's like, what is it going to take for you guys to start caring, for you to start speaking up and getting involved and talking more about politics within your group? Because it's too late for us. What about for you? Because this is your future now. This is what you need to be trying to speak up and stand up against. And the oldest one is like, we need to rewind 60 years so that our grandparents and parents will talk about politics at the dinner table and teach us about it and educate us better on how it works and why we need to be involved rather than just grumbling and carrying on. I said, fair point, can't rewind backwards. What do we do now? And he's unfortunately at a point where he's just like, I don't know. And then the youngest one said, it's got to be cool. It's got to be the cool thing for kids to do. It's got to be the thing that everyone else naturally wants to do. It can't be the nerds or the losers that are on student council. It needs to be the cool kids. And I was thinking, yeah, because it was just the cool kids that were on student council when I was a kid in the 90s. So how come, where's the shift happened? And where do we start now reinvigorating or exciting our younger population? Doesn't have to be teenagers, like our 20 to 35-year-olds. How do we get them involved and realizing that the steps they make now will be impacting their children's future?
Well, I'll throw a couple of things and see what you think. One is when I do my shows now, so I do, for the listener, I do an event. Now it's going to trim down to once a year. I got as high as, I think it was 4 in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the families that I really admire, and now they aren't bringing their 7-year-old, they're bringing their 14, 16. But I've had a family bring as young as, I believe, 12. Forgive me on that. I think it's 12. And I think as parents, we have to stop hiding our kids away from all of the things, right? So like, how do you make politics cool? Well, you got to realize politics, unless it becomes the United States, is a bit dry. But in saying that, should you bring your child along? Yeah, it's one of the things I'm excited. You were asking what I do in my downtime. You mentioned like guests, and what do you do? So this summer, my wife's from the States. We're going to take a 21-day road trip with our children, which is insane. I understand to any parent listening there, unless you've done it. And then you're like, by the end of it though, you're like, that was a lot of fun. Very rarely in our world do we get to spend that much time with our children. Like it's just closed, confined, all the anger. By the end of some days, you'll be just twitchy because people will be on each other and everything else. And one of the things I'm hoping to do, as my kids get a touch older, is expose them to what I do and some of the conversations I have. Not everyone. I don't think that would be healthy, but at the same time, expose them to different things. I got an older brother. He takes his 12-year-old son to some of the political stuff. And in fairness to him, he's got a son who's interested in it. And not every kid is going to be interested in politics like every kid's going to be interested in hockey. It doesn't go across universally the board. But parents need to, we're so inclined in this, and maybe your audience is different. And maybe this is just me talking. But like, it seems like our world pushes us to get a babysitter all the time, leave kids, when, there's so much work, get this and that, and hide them away. You go into a funeral, we're not going to, the kids can stay away from that. They don't need to go. But all these things are really important. Even boredom is really important.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. So like, how do you get kids involved in politics? Starts probably around the supper table, just talking about things and having and allowing for discussion and questions and everything, and understanding that, at times you're not going to have all the answers, and then you go search out the answers and you involve them in it. But I go back to the shows I've had. I've got families that are doing that. It's really interesting to watch and see how engaged their kids are in what their parents are involved in, and maybe even a further extension, what I've begun building with bringing people in internationally to speak is that kids are getting, like the youth are getting interested in it, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
That might be an idea.
No, it's a great idea. Well, and I mean, everything starts from the supper table. As you said, men, take care of your shit. And that's more than just bringing home an income and being able to financially support your family. It also means being able to communicate better, being able to have those conversations, being able to connect with ourselves and identify, like, this really sets me off. Why is it setting me off? Where do I need to go deeper to be able to understand it more? And that's the same as politics. That's the same as, like, as you mentioned, even the Trudeau family. And most of us, we can't stand to hear them speak anymore. Why is that? What's the visceral reaction? Well, yes. But why do we have such a visceral reaction that's disallowing us to try to hear more of what's happening? Because we dislike it so much, we turn it off. But is that helping us move forward? Probably not.
Probably not.
Because we're less educated on what's happening as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the men thing. The men thing has been on my mind for a long time.
It's a big thing.
And listen, in our culture, we're supposed to work a good job, bring home the bacon. We're graduating out of the culture that was probably my dad's world, where mom was a stay-at-home mom. And, like, to all the families today that are still doing that, kudos to you. Like, but there's just, as times become tougher, like, making a living off of one income is becoming extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So that even if you're a woman who didn't have aspirations of, like, going out and getting a great career and on and on and on, today it's getting tougher not to have a second income and go. And now in our world, though, for the most part, women are really pushed to go do all these different jobs, to have exceptional careers, and that to be the most important thing. We can get into that side discussion at a different time. When it comes to the men, what we've been conditioned to is you come home, you're tired, and everybody should understand that, and the kids want to play, and maybe you should play with them, but you're tired, and and I'm just going to have a beer or two, or maybe you're like, you save your beers for the weekend, I don't know, the other game's on, and on and on and on. And I'm not perfect at this. I want to be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is, when you sign up and you get married and you have kids, or, okay, you didn't get married, maybe in today's culture, you're common law or whatever, but you have children. It's like, you got to own your shit, which means there are going to be days where you are that tired and you still show up. And you are that tired, but you sit at the dinner table and you don't go somewhere else in your head. Like, you have to be present. And the reason why is those years are fleeting. Every elderly person will tell you, if they could go back, they'd go back to where you are sitting right now. And the reason why is it's so freaking important. Now, the one thing I also add for men is, this is why I think men's groups are so important. And now, before every man turns this off and goes, that corny stuff, blah, 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 I've been a part of a book club since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And all it is a health check on me. Like, you're talking about important things. You start off trying to be better husbands and better fathers. Gee, that sounds just high in the sky. But there was 2 guys actively exploring divorce. There was 3 of us that were new fathers, and trying to navigate that world of emotions and coming off of probably your 20s, where so many of us drink our lives away and we just party every weekend, and all of a sudden you can't do that because you have a little infant looking at you and a wife that's, like, what are we going to do? And you're like, I don't know. How the heck am I supposed to know? And so you get around men where you can actually talk about these things, and you don't have to sit there and hug and cry. That isn't what it is. When we started, we sat around, we had a bottle of, well, not a bottle, we had a drink, and we've graduated from, we don't do that anymore. But that's how it started. Yeah. And it, almost 6 years later, geez, I don't know where the time has gone. Almost 6 years later, to me, I'm like, I kind of get it. It's a health check. Yeah. It's like, every week you go meet, you talk about some things, you got some problems, they counsel you, they give you the insights, and you disperse and you go another week, and then you come back in, and that helps you with sitting at the supper table when you're tired and you gotta go coach the team practice, and you haven't had supper yet, and you've been up since 4 a.m, and you've been running your bag off and everything else. And other men are doing that too. That's part of the gig. Just life. And when you get older, the crazy thing is you'll wish you could go back to where you are right now.
Yep.
Like, so suck it up. There's no pity party here.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know if you got 10 men listening to your 10,000. They may all hate me or not. I don't really care. It's just epiphanies I've had over the course of a podcast and of a men's group, because it's been really, really important. Yeah. And I fail miserably all the time. I think that is probably one of the most human things out there. And men have a way of, the military guys who were just talking about dark humor. They just have a way of like putting things in perspective. Yeah. And you're like, okay. And you go back at it and you try and be better.
Well, and sometimes we just need someone to call us out on our shit, right?
Yes. And I would argue it can't be a woman. I mean, it can be your married woman. Like, it could be your spouse, sure. Yeah. But it's different when it comes from a group of men, especially when you respect them. Yeah. Because you're like, stupid. And then you go around and you think about it and you're like, and by the end of it, you're probably right. I should probably, and away you go.
Yep. It's the same for women too. We need other girlfriends to call us out on our shit every so often as well, because if it's the spouse doing it, we're just pissed off at them.
Well, and sometimes you have to stand firm against the spouse, and other times you just have, like, all of us have bad days too, right? Like,
we're human.
We're human. The human experience is a fun one.
Oh yeah,
it's very challenging.
It's very messy.
Very messy.
Yeah. But it's so much fun too. So I love this. You've interviewed so many people and so many diverse thoughts, and you have gone, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you have also interviewed people purposefully who go against your grain of thought so that you can get yourself outside of those silos and learn more from different perspectives, correct?
I wish I did it more. Okay. So like lately I've been trying, and if I'm honest with myself, I haven't tried as hard as I should have, but I had Charles Adler coming on, and then he backed out. I've been trying to get Ryan Jesperson on, and in the middle of COVID, I tried getting a doctor out of Saskatoon, and he never showed up. And, it's really uncomfortable for me because I don't want to do it. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't look forward to confrontation. But actually, I find most of the time when I sit across from somebody that disagrees with me, it's really easy to just keep asking questions. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? And I don't know. We'll see. But I do. The honest answer is I try to do it. I should probably do it more, Lisa. I don't do it enough. And probably none of us do it enough.
No, not at all. None of us. I think because it's safer, right? It's just safer to hide within that silo and keep us in the same train of thought and having people that share the same thought patterns.
We did a 1 million March for Children in Lloyd. And I helped organize that with a lovely group of people here. And my plan was to interview some of the counter protesters because I knew we were going to have them. Yeah. And so before I walked in, and I didn't tell anyone this so that people can call me on it and say I didn't plan it. But my plan had been I was going to interview like 2 or 3 of them. I was really interested to hear their thoughts because all I was there to protest especially on that one, was I just want to be informed of what's going on with my child at school. I don't think that's too much to ask.
No.
And so I didn't think I had this extreme position, and I was kind of curious. And it's the first time where I've actually said I will not interview these people because I was so disappointed in their actions. And this was in Lloyd. We had like 700 people show up, families, kids, grandparents, had a lovely group of speakers that, honestly talked a lot about faith. But there was some things in there about the schools as well. And none of it was extreme. Like, it wasn't like, I don't know, death to the LGBTQ or something wild. Like, it wasn't anything like that. I could understand if they showed up thinking that's what it was going to be. I could even understand that. But after like 15 minutes, they should have known that wasn't what it was. And they tried as hard as they could. There was 4 of them. There was probably 12 of them that showed up versus 700. And there was 4 of them that tried their utmost to draw everyone into a fist fight, they were verbally abusive. They were almost physically abusive, like, and on it went. And I was so disappointed in that part of humanity. It's the first time I've just been like, I have no time in talking to you people.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's probably the first time in my life where I've been like, especially with the podcast, where I've been like, I don't want to talk to somebody. And it's because of their actions. I got to witness it firsthand. And I was like, what is the point of talking to you? You won't even listen to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Not talking about you can't be gay or lesbian. We're saying parents want to know what's happening with their children in school.
Yeah.
Wow, you'll never understand. I don't know. I would disagree with that thought myself, right? But it wasn't even that. It wasn't even this calm discussion. By the time it was end, there was one guy screaming, "God is dead," and I'm like, I don't know what the heck that's supposed to mean while we're here and and on it went. But I'm probably doing a poor job of reminiscing about it. I remember standing on stage as, like I had a grandmother come up talk. She was like shaking because of what they were doing. I was like, this isn't right. Like, it just isn't right. And that's the first time in my life I've had that thought where I'm like, I don't know if I can bring myself to be calm enough to sit across from somebody and not be mean. No, honestly, I was very, very shocked at how they presented themselves.
Yeah. Well, and to have that self-awareness that you might not have the wherewithal to be able to control your emotions when you're trying to have a conversation with someone who is just instantly on edge, instantly elevated in their anger, or even confusion of what they're trying to speak about. And for you to be able to then somehow navigate a healthy conversation through that is incredibly difficult. So, I mean, kudos to you for the awareness on that.
I do admire people that can do it, though, because there are people that have that skill. And I think, once again, it is a skill that, you just have. It's probably the first time I've ever witnessed something like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, now if I knew it again, I'm like, all right. Because you remember when, and maybe this is still a thing, remember when Seattle had that block by Antifa that was like, just a no-go zone?
Yeah.
Like, I would just love to take a camera down there. I'd just love to go interview a few of them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'd die or not, but I'm like, I just love to go and sit and chat with a couple of them and just see what's going on. Like, no agenda. Like, I'm not a big fan of the government either. So just tell me what the plan is and what you guys are doing. I just, that's pretty much how I approached all of COVID. Yeah. It's like, well, I did some things I don't understand. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely.
Ask some questions. And people lost their absolute and uncontrollable crap on that, which was probably even more shocking. And it's probably why it's harder to talk and bring people in from all sides. If you don't think asking questions is a good thing, I don't know what to say to that.
It's not a podcast.
Well, it's not a conversation. Like, it's not journalism.
No.
Like, there's never just one side to a story. You gotta, it's messy. You gotta ask questions. You gotta dig a little bit. You gotta try and find out the story.
Yeah.
What's actually going on here?
Absolutely.
And what podcasts have done is they've unearthed so much of that in our society today, of just things that nobody was talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you pretty much got a phone right now. You can go do interviews anywhere, and you can start talking to people. And once you start talking to them, you realize, holy crap, there's been a lot of people not talked to in a long time.
Yeah.
That's what drove me to go on the Freedom Convoy and to walk the streets and walk the middle of the convoy while I was parked on the highways and just talk to people and see, like, what drove you to come across Canada in the middle of the dead of winter. It's like minus 35. It's brutal out. And drive the entire country, which is not the size of, I don't know, Hawaii. Like, it's this big, giant landscape. And those stories are, well, even to this day, it's unbelievable to me. Our government pushed a portion of the population to where they had no other choice but to do that.
Yeah.
And then the government-funded media didn't show up to cover it. People just want to know what's going on.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, we are conditioned to ignore what we don't understand. But we need to work on our level of understanding to be able to actually help fix or change something as well. Because we can't fix it if we don't understand it.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there. To me, where I stare at it, I go, we gotta stop addressing the symptoms. We got to address the problem.
Yes.
And what's the root of the problem here in Canada? And that's a deep question. Certainly, the current Trudeau as their prime minister is a problem. Mm-hmm. That government is a problem, certainly. But there's a deeper problem, and it depends on how deep you want to go into that problem to get to the crux of, like, well, you go back to what we were talking about with it ain't no overnight change.
No.
Like, I personally think men need to be men. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be called to do things that you never thought you were called to do. And you're going to have to stand in front of people and say, we're not doing that. Mm-hmm. And our society today, I don't think, as much as we think they're ready for to be told no, I'm not so sure on that, because we like our popcorn and the show.
Yeah. Yeah. The luxuries need to be removed, and then we need to do some deep diving, but that's pretty difficult. Pretty difficult to remove that, but one day we'll get there, bit by bit. Well, it is happening slowly.
Well, the problem is one day it could, I follow a lot of different guys who talk about cycles, right? Like, life happens in cycles, society, civilizations happen in cycles. Sorry. And wow, you're like, oh, okay, so eventually it'll come back and it'll be fine. It's like, but you're forgetting about that part where it goes through the like absolute horrific time to get back to where, and it's comforting knowing that it's happened before. Many civilizations have gone through, the identical place we are. Well, like technology and different things like that, probably not, but. Sure. But at the same time, in their own version, it rings. It's very similar, and so there's comfort in that. But I mean, like, okay, so we're gonna go through a tough time, yippee-ki-yay. Like, people need to take care of their families, take care of themselves, because if you can do that, and then you can maybe start to help your community out. Maybe you can weather the storm that is certainly going to happen. I mean, it's certainly been happening. I just read an email before I hopped on here. It was sent by a man who'd come to my event here at the end of April, and it was an essay. Like, it took probably 10 minutes to read, but it was a lovely story. I'm going to call him because it was a lovely story about how some of the guests I've had on the podcast he's been following for 10 years. So when COVID hit, they knew what it was.
Yeah,
and there was just no question in his mind. He just knew what it was, and they steered their family, as best as they could through an unmanageable situation, from the standpoint of what the government did. Like, it just got wild. Mm-hmm. And hearing that story, I'm like, well, that's what I'm trying to do for my family moving forward. Yeah. Is there's going to be things that feel cataclysmic. Mm-hmm. But if you know what's coming and can just can try and navigate it, you'll be better off, your family will be better off. And if you can have strong families, your community will be better off.
Yeah.
I know that's not a way to fix Canada, but you think about it, if we all started there, Canada, over the course of a year or two, I've been in a book club 6 years now. Over the course of 6 years, I think if, every man was doing it and putting in the level of energy and everything else, we might be surprised where we're at in 6 years.
Oh, 100%. And let's face it, a country is built on the communities. It's not the communities are built by the country. And Correct. So the communities, small or large, inner community or your municipality, they can strengthen themselves from within. And then it just becomes a ripple effect as other communities look to them to see, like, what are you doing? How come it's working for you? What can we learn from you? And in part, that's what's a lot of these interviews for yourself and even for myself is we're bringing information out for other people to be able to latch onto something, a thought, an idea, a perspective that aligns with them, so then they can help strengthen themselves to be able to grow and become stronger and hopefully spread that ripple effect out just a little bit more. And it's just one little ring at a time as we get stronger from within, so without.
Yes. Like when I used to listen to a ton of podcasts, like go back to the compliment you paid me like right at the start. That means a lot because when I first started listening to podcasts, it was almost exclusively Joe Rogan, and I binged on that for, and I was just I was just taking in so many things I'd never heard before. And I hope just one of my podcasts can do that for somebody. Can just set them on the train of like, holy crap, without that episode, I would have never, on my wall, it says, whatever time you have, attack like you're trying to save the world. And that's from Joe Rogan and Annie Jacobson, episode 900 and change. And it was a terrible, I say it all the time, it was a terrible episode. Annie Jacobson wrote a book, which I've since read, Project Paperclip, that was very, very good. But the actual episode was a stinker, except for this 3-minute rant-ish Rogan had, talking about how if you're working a dead-end job and you got married and your kids, you got a house, you're stuck. And Annie goes to him, so you're saying they can't get out? He says, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the time to get out was when you're in your 20s. Now you're stuck. And so you got to attack the world like you're trying to say, So I put his quote on the wall. It's way more beautiful than that. I've released it multiple times on social media because it's just so instrumental in how my brain latched onto it, and it became my war cry for 3 years until I could go full time. And it's funny, I wish I would listen to more Joe Rogan, except now I'm trying to track down all these different people and interact with them myself. So I can grow and adapt and on and on. And the community thing, you go all the way down to it, is you just don't understand what your choices have an effect to people who are watching you. It may be one person watching you, it may be 50 people watching you, but guaranteed somebody's watching you. And, you go about living your life in my term, the right way, and you show up for your family, and you're a good husband, and you show up for your kids, and you work your job, and you do your things, and when things go wrong, you stand up and you go speak your mind, and everyone, it spreads. It's no different than the opposite. It spreads. And I have no misconceptions that I'm going to save Canada, but I do think on some small level here in Lloydminster, I can and maybe have had an impact. That more men and in turn families are starting to create a more tight-knit, stronger community, so that whenever the next thing comes, we're looking out for each other. And it isn't nearly as bad, and I don't feel nearly as isolated like so many people did in COVID, but I'm sure it goes further back than COVID. And we start to work ourselves out of this thing. But it's going to take time. Heck, it might not be in my lifetime, which is a really sad. I want nothing more than my kids to live in a time where, there's no problems. But that isn't life. That isn't the world. That isn't people.
No. If anything, to teach your kids how to handle and walk through the problems with their head held high.
Yeah, we've been talking lately about maybe this is the best time to be alive. Like, you're actually confronted with things and you go like, that makes zero sense. And your kids get to grow up underneath it, watching you deal with it. It's uncomfortable. It's not exactly fun most days. And yet, in saying that, it isn't not fun, right? Like,
yeah.
And so maybe it's the best time ever to be alive.
I don't know. I think it comes down to perspective, right? And how you choose to look at it. As you say, with being endlessly curious, if we continue to be curious, then we're never stuck in one spot. We're never locked down because our curiosity opens up so many other possibilities for us. And it allows us to question things, and it allows us to be able to, maybe it's a bad time right now, but it doesn't mean I'm stuck here. So how can I work towards shifting the perspective, learning something new to be able to move forward and maybe carry one person alongside with me as I do that?
Yeah, well, you get right with the big guy.
Yeah.
And the world's problems just seem a little less dangerous. And that's my perspective. And people can take it or leave it. I'm quite all right. I've been yelled at it about a lot. I've been praised for it a lot. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You walk outside and meet your neighbors, little things like that, and find a way to create your happiness around you, your joy. And all of a sudden, lots of things will fall away. It doesn't mean you won't have to stand up for your beliefs. No, we're being called on more and more every day to stand up for what we believe in, because everything that I believe in seems to be being attacked.
Yeah.
Like it just, everything. And so it doesn't mean that there aren't hard times ahead, but like, I don't know, what are you going to do? Like, make it every day is the worst day ever, and the world's so, you got to go through that growth stage.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their, the Matrix movie got some things just beautifully right.
Oh, yeah.
And when he comes out of the Matrix and then, pukes and everything because he's just having a hard time dealing with it.
Yeah.
I understand. Like when you get pulled out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
And you just start to see things and you're like, wait a second. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make it. What? And then you start to grasp how large it can be paralyzing. And I think a lot of people go through that stage. Actually, probably most.
Oh, yeah.
But you come through the other side. I don't know. I went and coached U9 ball last night, and I didn't think of anything but making sure the kids were having a good time, and and was very proud of both teams because they got to hit the ball.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I don't think of the other things. I certainly do, and I hope I'll be ready the next time I'm called on to stand for what I believe in, and whatever way that is. And if I'm never called again, then okay.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I still got to show up for my wife and my kids. I got to find a way to be happy with like being around them and seeing them grow and develop and wrestle with things. And I love sports. I get to coach sports. Maybe you love, I don't know. I got a buddy who loves MMA, like jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And so he's got his kids in that, and he's finding a way to bring that light into the more kids' lives and more men's lives. And I'm like, that's super cool. Like, great. Because we all need that in life. Without that, we become a dark well of despair, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Then we're not fun to be around at all. So finding ways to live in those momentary joy and just trying to, I really and truly model a good life while you are still standing for what you believe in and speaking up is probably the best way to define a life well lived.
I would agree.
Yeah. This has been wonderful. I want to say thank you so much, but I don't want to suck up too much more of your time, Shaun. So I
carved out a lot of time for you. So you
awesome.
You just tell me to get out of here and stop talking, and I'm out.
Well, as much as I would love to rival Joe Rogan in length of podcasts, I'm not sure my viewership is quite there yet.
How long before you kick you usher me to the door? How long have you go? How long have you tried going?
Oh gosh, not long. So I released my first one. I think it was like middle of October. And I threw it out to this container that I'm in that, I said, fuck it, I'm doing a podcast and who wants to be my guest? And at that time I had no plans. Like I was like, let's just go. And I had enough people sign up for me to have 3 months worth of weekly releases.
Perfect. Yes.
And it's just been snowballing from there. I think I've had to ask 4 people, that's it, who were like on my list of people I'd like to interview, yourself included. And I have more people that are ready to be on there, and they sign up themselves because I use a Calendly link for them to sign up if they want to speak. And
but duration, we're sitting at an hour and a half. What is the longest podcast you've done?
I think my longest one, let me pull out.
While you're looking, the reason I ask is when I first did it, I did like 45 minutes. Then I did 50. Then I hit the hour mark. And I went on, and I did a 3-hour one.
Yeah.
And it was like getting 3-second breaths. Like like at an hour and a half, I was kind of like starting to tire out. At 2 hours, I kind of perked up. At 2.5, I kind of down. And that's the longest one I've ever done. I did it just over 3 hours of conversation. It was
a good one.
It was a local guy. Mm-hmm. This is like episode like 15, folks. It was a local guy who had played hockey. Probably the highest level was the East Coast, and he just had stories, and nobody'd ever listened to him, and he just wanted to talk about him.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, all right. And at 2 hours, I tried shutting it down. He's like, oh, I still got a few more if you wouldn't mind. I'm like, I tell you what, if you want to keep going, we'll keep going. And it's funny with the podcast, if you had 45 minutes, you're like, this guy sucks, or the dishes are done and I got to get on with my day.
Yeah.
You know, you just flip it on the next day and finish it off. So I just chuckle on how long your longest is.
I think my longest has been about an hour and a half. My shortest has been in the 45, 48 minute range. And the title lends itself. It's a ramble. So it could go in any direction, right?
Sure.
And to me, that's where good conversation comes from. I was a guest on one podcast, and it was very like scheduled out, planned questions. There was nothing that flowed from what I answered, and it was so rigid. And I was like, I cannot do this style. This is not for me. And I don't think it's really fair to the listener either, because there's so much more that you can pull from people when you're just going without an agenda. Like I had a list of questions for you that we've touched on 2 of them.
Oh, I apologize.
No, I much appreciate this.
Sometimes I'm really in the mood for this as a listener. Sorry, I mean.
Yeah.
And other times I really appreciate the questions. Mm-hmm. It's because sometimes, you know, like I think in the middle of COVID, there were some things people just wanted to know, and they didn't care about no rambling. Just get to the point. And I've been not harassed about that, but I've been pushed on, because like one is when I have the Premier on. People want to know their question, and so I get mad. I get people mad for 2 reasons. One is I ask a question and then I don't spend 25 minutes. I only get 25 minutes with her, and sometimes not even that. Right? So they're like, you didn't spend enough time. I'm like, man, enough time? Like, what am I supposed to do? 25 minutes with the Premier on one question?
Yeah.
You know? So the list is good though. I appreciate the conversation.
No, it's been wonderful, and I think you and I could probably talk for 3 hours, truly. And I do have to get to my other job though, because this is not a full-time gig. Maybe one.
Keep working at it. My encouragement to you is keep going. Right? Like I did exactly what you're doing almost 6 years ago, and that's where it started. And as long as you're having fun with it, right? You just keep interviewing people. Hopefully, I'm the doormat. Hopefully, you get a whole bunch of better guests than me. It's always interesting being this guy, and I'm sure you completely agree. Being the host, being interviewed, it's like I'm trying to normally I'm the one asking the questions, I guess, folks, is what I'm trying to say. Either way, thank you for inviting me on. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. This was great. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. And good luck with everything that you've got coming down the pipe too, because you've got another 600 ahead of you for sure.
Well, I to the listener, and to you, I hope I have like 10,000 more. Yeah. I personally think hockey, I thought I was going to do the rest of my life, which I plan on playing the rest of my life. But I really feel like I've found a job that I can do until, I'm Don Cherry's age, right? So, do I do 5 a week for the next 30, 40 years? I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah.
But certainly right now, I'm in love with it, and I can't do it enough. Like it's addicting, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And it's just the things you learn and the way that it fuels your natural curiosity it makes it worth all the time and everything. There's so much to gain from it, and so many hidden skills that one can gain from it as well. The editing alone, so it's great.
100%. Now I'm going to stop asking you questions because I got like 3 more, and I'll leave you be and let you get on with with the rest of your day. But I appreciate you inviting me on, and look forward to seeing what you do here in the future.
Thank you, and we'll be watching you too. All right, you take care.
Thank you.